Nothing looks like it's live everywhere, and it is just about that time. Hello, hello, everyone. I am Kelly Blackman, and I'm so glad to have everyone here. Hopefully, I got everyone in. I was having a little bit of a technical issue earlier, but let me just see here. I believe my StreamYard is working okay. Um, Welcome to Living Life on Purpose. And honestly, this is a lot of where my heart is. Any of you who know me personally, or who even follow some of my posting and my social media, you know that this is a real big issue for me. So trying to live with purpose, trying to live within that purpose is a big thing. Um, so let's jump right in. Today we're going to actually be talking about how to create a life around the idea of purpose. So there are 7 key steps. Let me just start off by saying these are steps that uh, I am not the creator of, or at least not entirely. All this research is out here already, and as a life coach, what I've been able to do is really just kind of pull apart some of this, and I've found a lot of stuff that has been working, a lot of stuff that has been helping people. So for me, this is about as beautiful as it gets. So what I want to do is actually, you know what? Let me give people just a couple of more moments. Uh-oh, and I see some people aren't able to view the video. So give me just a sec. This is the beauty of being a solopreneur. Work on all of this on my own. So for any of you all who are on LinkedIn, I am going to post the link, and hopefully you all are able to get in without a problem. All right. Yep. Oh, it looks to me like I'm live, but I'm just gonna post that link for my feed, all the wonderful, beautiful people out there in a post. And then that way, if anyone is running into any issues, they'll be able to check in without a problem. All right, and posted. All right, awesome. Good to see you, Brian. I'm glad that you were able to get in. All right, awesome. So, getting right to it, when we're talking about living life on purpose, is obviously a little bit of a play on words, but realistically, uh, what I found just through research is that there is a lot of us. There's a lot of us out here in the world who really aren't living life. We're mostly just existing because we lack purpose. We lack that that sort of direction. So what I want to do is I'm going to jump on into some slides. I want you all to know that I spared no expense when I did these myself to make these slides. So you should see here the title slide, and you guys just send me a message if anyone isn't seeing that or if there's something not working here. Otherwise, we will proceed. All right. And yep, there we go. A little bit of a lag too. So obviously that's great. So to start off, let me just tell you a little bit about me. Uh, Back in 2008, I started my first coaching business. It was actually called Smith Blackman Business Consulting. It was me and my wife. And because of the fact that I was in school for accounting, because of the fact that I was taking business, I was like, man, this is a thing that I get. This is a thing that I know. And what's really interesting is that they're the big firms, the Accentures, the Bains, all the big places, they wouldn't cater to smaller businesses. So if you needed some business advice because there wasn't as much information on the internet yet, boy, if you needed business advice, you'd have a huge problem because unless you're at the library trying to pull out books and stats to try to figure out how to run your business, you were pretty much stuck. So when I when I saw that this was an issue, I saw all of these small businesses in my neighborhood, and you'll see the wing hung business. That was actually my first client. Um, it was just a case that there are all of these mom and pop businesses that were saying, "Hey, I got no idea. Like I'm really great at making Chinese food, but I got no idea how to run a business. I don't know what to do outside of, running a sale every so often to do the marketing." So in 2008, I was like, "Man, I'm going to put my foot to the pedal. I'm going to actually go." Incorporate it, and that was my first venture. I learned a lot, but what I did find out is that after a couple of years, um, the people who were really gung ho, the people who were really excited about their businesses, most of them weren't after that. Wing Kong actually closed down not long after. It wasn't my fault. Let me just start there. But what I will say is a lot of the folks who were really good at doing whatever they're good at, they're not good at business. It made a niche for me because those big companies, I talked to Accenture, they said, well, if you don't make $10 million a year, we can't talk to you. So I was in there. I was like, man, I was doing business plans, marketing plans, running marketing campaigns, SWOT analysis, having a ball with that because, there's money in that sort of thing. At the same time, wasn't a chance that I was going to ever really be able to stick with it because what I found out is that the thing that I was really enjoying was helping people feel like they were fulfilling something. Now, I'll come back to that later because what I did after that was I actually became a like an independent consultant, freelancer. In 2014 was great for the gig economy because I was able to do resumes and career planning and really helping people to shift from one job to another. Usually, I was really good at helping to translate where people's skills were, and it's horrible because now I do a crappy job on my own resume. I pay somebody to do it. But it is the case that I was doing it then, and I made a good amount of money doing it. What I really found out though is that after a while, helping somebody get into a big four accounting firm or something like that, they a year later they're like, "No, this job sucks. I hate this place." The dream is gone again. And the beautiful part about that is that what it did lead me to was this idea, or at least a question of what's actually important to people, because it obviously wasn't helping people to start their business or helping people to get into the right job. So there was something more. Well, in 2019, I actually started Butterfly Effect Consulting. It's a BE Consulting. And what it actually came from was this idea that I was finding my own purpose and being able to find my own purpose. As I started to talk to people about this, what I started to find out is that one, a lot of people didn't have a huge idea about what their own purpose was. And two, as I talked to them about my purpose, people lit up. It was like turning on the light. And when I found that, that became the center of, or at least close to the center of my own purpose and my own business. So again, we'll get into a little bit more of that later. But did you know that people who have a sense of purpose just live better lives? I've looked this up more than once just to double check and see if these things are correct. But what you'll find is that people who have a higher sense of purpose, better immune system, they have less Alzheimer's. It protects your brain. People live longer. People are protected against heart disease. People have better relationships with their families, with their spouses, with their kids. I mean, there's a lot to be said about having a strong sense of purpose. Now, here's going to be the kicker, though. When I looked at these stats, and this was just from a couple of years ago, and I know that this is only saying America, but I promise I just talked to a coach in India. It had to be 2 days ago, and she literally told me about these exact same issues. that people don't they have a lack of a sense of purpose. And if even if these numbers are skewed a little bit, the reality is that 75% of people not having that sense of purpose means that that's that many more people who are more in line for Alzheimer or dementia, who have a higher cases of heart disease, that sort of thing. So there's a real serious need here. So when I put those two things together to see how my life felt like it was changing, my life felt like it lit up, how other people were lighting up when I started talking about purpose, and then to see these stats that really say, hey, there's a real need here. So where does that leave us? Well, that leads us into what we're going to talk about today. We're going to cover a few different things. There are five essential principles of purpose that we're going to talk about. There's obviously the thing that I advertised, the seven keys to creating a life around purpose. There are a few resources that I want to make sure I drop to you before this is all said and done. That way, things like uh, emotional intelligence questionnaires or assessments, some of the books that I've read on this stuff, I want to make sure you have access to all of that because it's not a master class if you leave away from here still having more questions than you started with. So let's jump right in. The five principles of purpose. Now, this is by no means an expansive list, but I did pull out the five things that I found in my coaching and my conversations with people that are probably right at the top when it comes to talking about purpose. So the first thing is a purpose is not the same thing as a goal. All right. Uh, the second, purpose is not static. It is a moving target. It is not always the same, and it's not going to stay the same probably ever. But you will be able to target it and get close to it. Your purpose is unique, which basically just means that because someone else is following a certain path, does not mean that you're going to follow that same path and get the same result. Your purpose is not about you. I talk to a lot of people who are very much into their purpose is to serve and that sort of thing, but really what they're talking about is getting validation or being being valued, that sort of thing. So purpose isn't that. Purpose is about the bigger picture. The last piece I want to make sure I talk about is that purpose is not grand. You don't have to save the world, you don't have to cure cancer. Purpose is really more so about you and your decision making. So moving forward, because I want to make sure we do leave enough time to get some questions in the chat. And oh, hey, I see someone from Phoenix jumping in. All right, thank you so much. And I see Promise. Promise, thank you so much for being here, sis. All right, so let's start off with this. The purpose is not the same thing as a goal. This is a little bit of a confusion that I think people run into a lot of times. Uh, Purpose, just for definition's sake, is the reason for which something is done or created or for which something exists. It's the reason why. All right. That's going to be totally different from a goal, which is kind of like the object of a person's eye. It's what we desire, is what we really want to get to as a person. Um, Goals are all about things we're trying to accomplish, whereas purpose is about connecting to something bigger than us. I usually like to call it our ideal purpose or our highest purpose because there are levels to this, but your highest purpose is going to give you the most direction. So that's what this is really all about. In the end, goals are about what we want to do, and purpose is about our reason for doing it. So just so we have a kind of a clear cut line, a delineation there. That's what that is. Now, the second point here, purpose is not static. Our purpose doesn't stand still. I know that I've read some literature where people say, hey, well, your purpose is going to be the same from birth to death, but that's just not true. If you look at the chart here, the little picture here, the way that we think, our cognitive thinking, it basically rolls in three pieces. It's our behavior, our emotions, and our thoughts. And you can imagine that when you were 15, you're going to think different from when you were 20. If you were 25, you're going to be thinking different than when you're 50. Just because of the fact that our experiences are different, our thoughts are going to be different, which is going to change our behavior, which is going to change our emotions, and that whole line is going to keep on changing as long as we're still growing as people. And honestly, you don't want it to be the same because that means you're probably stuck as a person, which is no fun. All right, moving on to the third principle here. Purpose is unique. The reality is that sometimes we will pursue something and we'll think, oh, this is the thing that I want. We'll see Oprah Winfrey and say, oh, well, Oprah's doing this. So I want to take that. I want to step in her shoes. I want to be that. But the reality is that just based on the differences that you have, purpose is born out of your own experiences. So if you're from a different country, different culture, different age group, different gender, have different experiences, which is pretty much unique to each one of us. These things are going to mean that your purpose is going to still be very, very different from another person's purpose. Now, that being said, yes, you can definitely have the exact same purpose, and there's a million different ways that you can aim at that purpose. For instance, for me, my purpose has to do with serving people, right? That's a part of it. Someone else, they may have the exact same purpose, but if they're saying, "Yeah, but if people didn't know about this, I definitely wouldn't do it." Well, that's no longer purpose. That's you trying to find something that validates you, or you trying to get props. So it does change it a lot. Um, moving forward to the fourth, purpose is not about you. Now, again, this isn't an expansive list of things that purpose is and that purpose aren't, but purpose isn't. But the reality is that this should give us a pretty good idea. These things on the left side, validation, getting wealthy, uh, proving people wrong about you, making amends, um, those things, um, those things are very self-focused. Focus on us does not equal purpose, y'all. Purpose is actually about the greater good. It's about a collective. It's about humanity. It's about anything that we share as human beings. So whether that's the environment or our resources or just our society, those things are all of us. And purpose does need to be connected to something bigger than you. That's what keeps it from just being a goal or keeps it from just being something that's self-focused. Right. And lastly, I'm sorry, purpose is not grand. It doesn't mean grand. The reality is that um, if you found that you were really good at swimming and you wanted to help people feel better about themselves through swimming lessons, and that's what you're doing to find a way to connect that to the greater good, then yes, that can totally be your purpose. And the reality is that you doing that is no different from what Gandhi is going to say is his purpose, right? Like, so the idea is when we stop making it about us having to get something in it, when we take out the selfish portion of it, we take out that portion, then it becomes about purpose. And then we don't need it to be grand. We don't need it to be that we cured cancer because it just is what it is for the sake of itself. And God, I hope that wasn't confusing. The reality though is that when you're putting together purpose, what you want to think about is the overall greater good, and what you want to think about is whatever your specific talents are, whatever your specific interests are, your specific experiences. That's what's going to create your purpose, not how big it is. Right now, we're going to move right on into the seven keys here for actually building a life around purpose. Now, it's story time. I'm going to tell you why. Because the first key here is that you want to build your life, your purposeful life around stories. Now, what's really interesting is this is that if you take a look at us as human beings, we tell ourselves stories all the time. There are some people they will swear to God they are the finest, most beautiful thing ever, and you realize that they're not. They think they are. There's going to be some other people who think that they are uh, ridiculously bad looking people. And you're like, man, you are nuts. Like, you're gorgeous. I can't believe you. Those are the stories we tell in our heads. So, the first key when we start talking about building a life around purpose is that we want to take control of that narrative. We actually want to we actually want to tell ourselves the story that we want to live up to. And in a way, it's like when you are creating goals. So, here's what I have clients do. It's you start off with at least a one page a one-page story about you. And you'll see the way this activity works. All you need to do is you're going to create a description of your most amazing life, and you're going to actually put into words what that life looks like. Just needs to be one page. You want to make sure that you put into it what it took to live such an amazing life. You want to make sure that you put into that. Oh, sorry. You want to make sure that you put into that anyone who helped you to create that life, any obstacles, any situations you had to overcome. You want to put into that story the lessons that you've learned. And essentially, what you're doing is you're starting to craft a new story. And that's going to be much, much different than very likely what you've been told or what you've been telling yourself. Now, here's the reason why it works. The way that the human brain works, we are all listening to narratives all the time, all the time, all the time. In fact, about 80% of the communication that we have as human beings, usually almost all of it, like 80% of it is actually in our own heads. So that self-talk, that's going to make a huge difference. That's going to make a lot, especially as we become adults, that's going to make a lot more of a difference than anything that anyone else tells us. All right. The thing is that the way that the mind works, as we're telling ourselves those stories, because if we don't check them at a certain point, our minds just believe. They just go along with it. They feed into the story. So what we want to do is we want to make a better story. We want to talk about not a fake story. We want to talk about where we were, where we are, and we want to be real about that. And then what we want to do is we want to actually talk about where we're going. And that's the part that can be any which way you want it to. That story is going to actually change a lot, because what's going to happen is that as you tell yourself that story, now again, you have to be realistic. You can't decide that, you were living under a shoe and now all of a sudden you're going to the moon. Like those your brain has to be able to fathom that jump. But that means that if maybe you're in a dead end job right now, maybe you're in a career that you don't like, yeah, you can definitely make up that story. Hey, Karen was in a dead end job, and then she went back to school. Then she trained in this. Then she learned that. And what you're essentially doing is you're putting together a way for your brain to start building neurons around seeking that reality. Um, as funny as it is, the way our brains work is a little bit ridiculous, because what it's essentially telling us is that I'm going to give you whichever reality you're asking for. It's just on us. We have to actually ask for it. All right. The second key here is learning the art of failing. Now, I'm going to tell you the truth. Um, everybody falls. Everybody falls. Everybody falls. It's not something you're going to be able to get around. And I know I probably got a dozen or so perfectionists right now yelling. The reality is that failure is normal. Not only is it normal, it's a part of how we grow. We actually need this. Um, we're all gonna fall short of our goals. We're all gonna aim too high sometimes. And you can imagine how little you'd ever grow if you only aim for things that you already knew you could do. Like nobody jumps up and celebrates after they walk 3 steps. They're not like, oh yeah, I was walking yesterday, walking today, I'm killing it. Not the way things work. What we want to do is we want to actually do what we call failing forward. Failing forward pretty much means that you're leaning into the failures. Not only are you leaning in, you're planning for failures. You're planning around what that would look like. You're giving yourself permission to fail, because that's also a big thing. And what you really, really want to do is you want to allow yourself to access the mental capacity to learn from those failures. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, because that's almost amazing. And did I skip a slide? Yes, I think I did. All right. Here's the key about learning from failures. The way that our brains are wired, is actually necessity for us that pushes everything. So if you've ever had that time where you fell short of something and you really felt bad and you were angry, you wanted to cry, you're really upset, you feel worried about what's going to happen next, you're trying to figure out, man, are they right about me, or was I right about me with those bad thoughts I had? That place mentally, while it sucks and it feels so horrible, The reality is that that place is actually where our brain gets pushed to work more. So, boy, it was in 20 Guys, I want to say, had no, that was the wrong author. I'll find it and I'll post it for you all though. But in this book, The Talent Code, it made the point that basically what happens in our minds is that when we get to that very outer edge of what we can do, when we start to, they call them stretch goals, when we start to reach out for things that are just beyond what we can do, and we miss, and we stick with it, and we miss again and we stick with it, our brain, the reaction that we're having, the emotional reaction, makes our brain start to wire to solve that problem. So in the same way, our brains are going to look to, in the same way, our brains are looking to make sure that we don't get eaten by an alligator. It's wiring and saying, "Hey, this is life or death. These emotions I'm feeling, saying this is important," and it'll actually start to build neural pathways in order to fix whatever that problem is. So the exact feeling that you're looking at that you hate, that exact feeling that's super negative, is the exact feeling that's really going to help you get over the hump. So if you allow yourself to be courageous enough to fail, and one, learn from that failing, okay, and two, at the same time, you want to keep on going, what you're going to find is that you're going to have pretty much a treasure trove of experience, and it's going to supercharge your mind so that as you're actually learning, I mean, as you're actually failing, you're learning and you're moving forward, you're getting better. And I mean, for a feeling that sucks that we all have experienced but we all hate, that's a heck of a win. Now, the third key here is going to be about developing your emotional intelligence. Now, some people are super familiar with emotional intelligence. Just a few weeks ago, I did a poll on LinkedIn, and maybe about half the people had ever uh, gotten their emotional intelligence score. Here's the thing: emotional intelligence. It's fairly well known now. Maybe the last 20 years or so, there's been a lot more research on it, but here's what it is. It's a set of life skills. It's going to basically affect how we see ourselves, how we see other people, how we see the world around us. It's going to help us to manage our emotions. It's going to help us to manage our relationships. Um, Basically, it helps us to make use of our emotions in an appropriate manner, or in a manner that's actually going to be helpful to us. And one of the things that's really cool about emotional intelligence, or EQ or EI, um, it's actually been it's actually been correlated with having success in life. So monetary success, physical success, health wise, financial, I mentioned financial, relationship success. So EQ is really, really huge, and it's really a good determinant of what kind of lives we're going to live. So moving into this, if we just want to take a quick look at some of the things, and we're going to see several of the things that we talk about today that are going to hit these same sort of points. The research right now suggests that if you have higher levels of emotional intelligence, what you're going to be able to do is, again, have better workplace, especially if you're a company and you are helping your employees to develop emotional intelligence, especially your managers, or your leadership, to develop emotional intelligence. What you're going to find is that your whole workplace is going to change. And I will tell you that I've actually tried this myself, just trying to be the catalyst of an emotional intelligence cultural shift. And I tell you, with several hundred people involved, there's a distinct change, and you can see it, and it was hands down quantifiable. So the specific part of of emotional intelligence that we're going to talk about a little bit today is I'm sorry, self-awareness. Because what's going to happen is that before we start to understand the things that are going on around us, before we start to understand people, before we start to understand how we show up to them, we really do have to understand ourselves. So self-awareness is going to be a really big piece of that. Um, when we're talking about self-awareness, what's going to happen is that what we're essentially going to say is, I know who I am right now. I know what I'm feeling right now. Um, there's a little game that we play with clients as coaches where we ask people to kind of name the feelings that they're feeling, because a lot of times what you'll find is that people aren't, when you're feeling it, when you're right in the midst of being emotionally charged up, you really have very little access to the thinking part of your brain. So a lot of times you're really going to fall short on actually figuring out what's bothering you, what's actually happening. So to help people calm down and get into a place where they can actually uh, be more self-aware, you ask people to stop and name the feeling that they're feeling. Really cool game, I will tell you that. Um, especially this is especially important in high stress situations. So you imagine situations where there's any sort of conflict, situations at work. This is a really important piece. When we're talking about how that relates though to us living a purposeful life, the way that the world is, the way that our lives are, I mean, at any given moment, there's a pandemic, there's a war, there's a social unrest, riot happening down the street. Um, those things are real, and those things will throw you for a loop. And what happens is your ability to be self aware helps you to regulate your own emotions, and it helps you to regulate the way that you show up in the world. So when things are triggering, you don't have to be triggered. You actually are in charge of that narrative, and you get to actually choose. So that's a huge piece. Now, how do you do it? Well, this will come up a couple of different times because with self-awareness, with inner work, period, you're going to do a lot of the same stuff. Some of the best ways, one of the best ways is to journal. Writing things down, writing things down will hands down change the way you look at your life, yourself. Because as you leave that page and go about your life, when you come back you realize, oh wait, I was there. Oh, that's how I was talking. Oh, this is where I was. Oh, okay. And as far as self-awareness goes, it's one of the best things you can do. I would imagine, I would actually recommend people journal at least once a day, if you can. Write something, a sentence, two sentences. It's gonna literally change your life. Excuse me. Another good way that you can actually become more self-aware is by asking a trusted friend. Now, I'm going to give you the caveat. Uh, a trusted friend does not mean your buddy around the corner who really doesn't care whether you come or go. A trusted friend needs to also be someone who's emotionally mature, someone who you can trust their opinions. And what you want to do is you want to ask them to give you a hand with seeing things that are your strengths, your weaknesses. And once you see those things, you actually want to take a look at, if they say, yes, you're rude, you're brash, you cut people off. Well, now you have some things that you can actually start to look at and research for yourself to see, hey, is there something going on with me? Is there a way to conquer that? Is there something I can be doing? And one of the well, the two last things, you can get a coach. I do life coaching. I can tell you that it helps for me. I have a life coach. I've used a life coach literally this year, and therapy. Uh, you really want to have a third party. So not just you, not just whatever's in your head. You want to have someone else there that's actually going to be able to give you truth, information, feedback, and to keep you accountable. And the last way that I always recommend is psychometric assessments. So the MBTI test, the EQ test, all of these things that test your the way that you think, your cognitive ways of being. Those things are going to be super helpful for you because they actually give you what's hopefully going to be something that's verifiable, and it's going to be something that you can look back at and say, "Oh, I'm here." Now I can kind of know where I'm at and how to adjust. All right, so moving into the fourth key, it's going to be choosing positive self-talk. And I worded that choosing it because in a lot of ways we don't check our self-talk. I mentioned before about this 80% of our daily communication coming from inside our own heads. If you find yourself ever looking in the mirror after you made a mistake, oh, stupid, stupid, stupid. If you ever think, "Oh God, I can't believe she got over on me like that. I should have known." Those things, that's negative self-talk. And if you find yourself doing that, what you're doing right now is you're kind of strangling yourself from inside your own mind. So, um, our self-talk is essentially our conscious mind, our subconscious mind, our beliefs, our biases. It's everything together, and again, most of it is nonverbal, so we're in our own heads saying this stuff. But if we don't check those thoughts have so much power over us. That's again one of the reasons why we're going to do our story, because that story is going to be something that we completely controlled and crafted to be a positive version of us, and we're going to be able to lean into that and aim for that. Negative thoughts. It's almost like adding poison to your diet. Slowly and surely, you're gonna die. It's gonna stop you from being able to move forward. It's gonna stop you from being able to succeed at anything that you care about. It is it is literally one of the worst, most toxic things you can do, um, to have that negative self-talk. And looking here, the the difference in someone who has positive self-talk, or when you're positive doing positive self-talk for yourself, and negative self-talk, you see the increased vitality, the greater life satisfaction, the improved immune function. A lot of the things that we think of as physical ailments really are connected to our mental abilities and our mental state of mind. So what'll happen is, while we're sitting there saying, "Oh God, you're so stupid. I hate you. I hate you. I hate you." Our minds are taking that in, and you can see by what happens with the negative self-talk, it leads to depression. We have relationship challenges. There's anxiety involved. Um, in fact, uh, the anxiety and depression numbers are I want to say 10 times more when you add in the negative self-talk. I believe it was a stat that I read recently. It's a huge number, and that's a lot of where our own negative self-images come from too. So negative self-talk, point should be proven. It's bad, and it's in the name. It's negative. Now, here's the way you can do. Here's the way you can improve your self-talk. It actually is right in line with the self-awareness, because as you start to again do that inner work, what you'll start to realize is you'll start seeing places where it's like, oh, did I just say that? You'll realize how you're being negative sometimes. You'll realize when you're not believing in yourself. You'll realize when you're doubting yourself, when you're putting yourself, like, you'll self-awareness really is like shining a light on all of those things that we grew up with, all of those things that we heard from teachers and parents and siblings and friends. And it's really shining a light on those things. And as you start to do the positive self-talk, if you start to journal, you start to see those things, you can actually start making an effort to talk to yourself different. And I promise you, it makes a difference in everyone's life who does it, because it is just that powerful. So the fifth step here is sometimes you do have to seek and accept help. Now, I won't go really, really far into this, but I will say this. The Doing the inner work is really tough. Like, it's really tough. One of the things that I find when talking with people is each time we talk, there's always going to be a case where there's a hump to get over. Now, a lot of these times you've gotten over this hump already in your life, and that's what's led you to the point that you are now. But when you start getting stumped, when you start getting to the real meat of inner work, when you start finding the ways that you really look at stuff, the biases that you have, the things that maybe you didn't want to question, that's when it's time to bring in someone else. Usually easy enough. Get a coach, get a therapist, again, emotionally mature friend or family member. Uh, these are going to be people who are going to keep you accountable, people who are outside of your own brain. So they're not just going to agree with you, people who hopefully love and care for you enough, or at least get paid enough so that they will tell you the truth. They'll tell you when you're on BS, they'll tell you when you're wrong. That's completely necessary. And that's something that we all need from time to time. Now, I will say this. This is a particular struggle in some cultures, because we are really told that, hey, there's a weakness. Again, the Indian coach I talked to yesterday, she's like, oh, this is a real problem with Indian women. She's like, people are like, I'm not crazy. I'm not, and it's so funny because being a black man, I've gone through so much of the same thing where it's like, hey, I'm not crazy. Like when you start to talk to people in your culture about it, uh, this is a real thing. There's still a stigma that goes with what we consider weakness or we consider mental illness, that sort of thing. When all reality, everyone needs similar help. Everyone can use someone to vent to talk it out to. Don't be afraid to get that help. Don't, if you're not working with a coach, if you're not working with someone, you need to. You need to. And also, I'm going to give you my email after this so you can work with me. Now, step six, this is going to be even deeper into the deep work because this is something that I find that it is really tough. It's been tough for me, but there are people who are even worse than I am with this. And it really has to do with forgiving. So, step six is to really, really, really forgive literally everybody. Um, when you're living when you're living with purpose, it really means that you're trying to move toward a goal, toward a not a goal. You're moving towards your purpose. And what will happen is the more you hold on to negative emotions about other people, negative emotions about yourself, it really acts as an anchor. I don't know if you've seen an anchor, but they're like 10 to 20 tons. Uh, they hold you down. They'll hold you down. And not only will they hold you down, it'll keep your mentality attached to wherever you were in the past. So if you have stuff that you're holding on from your childhood, when to experience that anger, to experience that hurt, that resentment, that that judgment, that guilt, to remember that, to relive that moves you essentially mentally back into wherever you were then, which means that you're not the fully grown adult, fully living, fully functional person that you could be. So in order to really cut that anchor, you have to forgive. Now, I am going to throw this in there because a lot of times this doesn't get said. This includes yourself. This includes yourself. I'm going to say it again. This includes you. So, all the things that you've messed up, all the ways that you've been wrong, all the things that you've done to other people, you have to forgive you. Now, here's going to be the key. Sometimes people are still bad people. Sometimes they don't deserve your forgiveness, and that is okay because they don't have to have it, but you have to give it. Once you give it, you're releasing yourself and you're allowing your emotions to grow up and also mature and to become more emotionally intelligent. As long as you're holding on to the things of the past, uh, you're going to be stuck there. And if you're waiting for them to be better people to deserve your forgiveness, you may be stuck there for a long time. Same thing when it comes to yourself. You really, really, really want to let go of whatever you've done. You want to change, you want to learn, you want to make amends, and then you want to let go. Now, here's the challenge. Um, for a lot of people, it's really tough to forgive. Like they'll say they forgive, and then they'll say, eh, eh, I hate them though. Well, you haven't really forgiven them, have you? Sometimes sometimes we know we just haven't forgiven them, and we're working on it. So one of the things that I want to make sure I bring up is a few things that we can ask ourselves. This is how we can kind of rate where we are with our on our forgiveness scale. So if you're not sure if you've forgiven someone, or if you want to help out a friend or someone who says they've forgiven someone, ask them these questions. When you think of that person, what's the first thing that comes to mind? If you see their face bunch like scrunch up a little bit, and you see they get angry, that first thought is probably a negative one. They probably have not forgiven. Um, do you still think of getting even with that person? Do you still want some revenge? Again, if they're still in that place, if you're still in that place, if we're still in that place, we're not forgiven. It's the real thing. We're holding on. Third, last question here: do you want them to fail? So maybe not even if it's a case where um, we want to do something to them. Do you just kind of secretly want them to still fail? Are you angry if they start to succeed? That means we're not forgiven. One last question. I didn't list it here, but I'll mention it. Is the question of would you be willing to help them? If they needed help and it was within your power, would you be willing to help? That's not always an easy one to answer, and obviously you don't necessarily need to put yourself in harm's way or anything like that. But if it was reasonable, would you? And that's going to be the last key to how you know if you if you're actually forgiving someone. So the last step is to know your purpose. Now, I won't spend a whole lot of time on this one because we're getting close to the end of this class today. But I will say this: um, this is probably no, not probably. This is the first thing that you need to do. You need to become acquainted with your purpose because what's going to happen is um, if we're not clear about what our purpose is, none of the rest of these steps work. None of them work because you're basically trying to target smoke. It's chasing after the wind. Even it's until you understand what your purpose is. Excuse me, what your purpose is, there's really no way for you to live in alignment with it. Now, there are a number of good coaches I've talked to just recently, honestly, about purpose and about how to get to it and that sort of thing. For me, what I do is a free complimentary call. I will say this: my personal purpose works like this. When I started to understand it, I asked myself the question: if if you were attending your own funeral and you lived the best life you can live and everything went the way that you wanted it to go and someone's giving your eulogy, they're going to sum everything up in your life in one word. What would that in one sentence, what would that sentence be? And after I thought about it, I thought about this literally for probably weeks, maybe even a couple of months. And what I realize is that the thing that I hold most valuable, the thing that I believe that I've gotten that has been of the highest value and more than better than anything else has been love. I believe that I've received God given love. I feel like if I'm going to do anything purposeful, then I need to give that out. And my sentence became Kelly, he chose. He chose to give love in every last one of his decisions. So that's my purpose. When I look back at starting up Smith Blackman Business Consulting, I was enjoying it, and not just the whole idea of landing a client or this or that. I was enjoying helping people to find their dreams. The same thing when I was writing resumes for people. I was enjoying helping them to get closer to their dreams. And I also realized that when they weren't happy about it, neither was I. One of the things that it made me start to understand is that my purpose is very, very much tied to being able to help. And as I got older, that help didn't have anything to do with whether somebody else felt that help or whether they appreciated it or whether they gave me money for it or whether they even acknowledged it. It was me. And that meant that that was my higher calling. That was my purpose. So right now, when I think about um, I just talked to a coach today. He charges $20 to do a similar thing to help people find their purpose. But for me, this is how I help change the world. Because when I start talking to people about their purpose and they start lighting up, those people start talking to other people about their purpose. So now I am effectively helping the world to be different, little bitty, tiny, little itty bitty increments, but I am helping the world to be different. So, my purpose discovery call, it is completely free. Don't worry, I won't hard sell you. It is truly my way of trying to make things better. So, that's what I'll end with. Uh, I want to make sure that I took some time to mention that. That's my website right there. You can always reach out to me, LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube, wherever you're watching from, and ask me anything or get in touch with me as far as getting in for one of these. Actually, if you just go to the site, you can actually book a time for your free discovery call. Um, because we are done and wrapped up a little bit later than I wanted to, but let me ask, do we have any questions or anything? Right. I've only seen a couple of comments here, so I don't know if the comments are all coming through. So we had promise. and whoever LinkedIn user from Arizona is. But if anyone has any questions, I'll leave this live going, the stream going for just another moment. I'm gonna have to do one of these in person next time so it can be interactive because boy, I miss interacting. All right. I want to thank everyone who actually had a chance to view. Uh, if anyone has any questions, first off, hopefully you know me well enough to know that I'm open to help out in any way I can. So anything that I can do to support your journey, to help out, to answer any questions, please reach out. LinkedIn, Facebook, um, YouTube, send me a message, email me, and I am here. All right. Thank you all, and everyone have a great one. Bye bye.